Abney Park's The Toy Shop at the End of the World. Chapter 11, The Kitchen Floor. Chloe woke in the morning, and all was quiet. She could see Isabella's small pink hand dangling off the side of the hammock, and she knew she was still sound asleep. Chloe slipped her feet off the bed onto the cold and dusty stone floor. She rubbed her eyes with two fists, felt the grainy sleep sand. She sat on the raggedy bedside, letting her eyes open and close. Finally, she stood and trudged slowly to the kitchen, shuffling her feet as she went. She looked at the kitchen counter, and it was bare. No brown paper bag. She frowned in a defeated way and glanced towards her mother's room. She went to the sink and poured a glass of water. The water was brownish-orange, so she dumped it out and then filled it again. This time, the water was clearer, so she set it on the counter, pulled a plate from the sink and washed it. She put a meal bar on the plate. It was the second to the last, and she picked up the plate and glass and carried them to Mother's room. The first thing she saw was that Mother's handkerchief appeared to be muddy. It was completely covered in dark brown. There were dark brown spots on the blanket as well. She looked at Mother's face, and for just an instant Chloe was mad. It looked to her as though Isabella had put purple lipstick on Mother's lips as she slept. That seemed horribly disrespectful. But then Chloe noticed that Mother's cheeks looked wrong too. They looked more limp than they had the night before, more transparent. Chloe set the glass and the plate on the nightstand and put her hand on Mother's forehead, but instead of being startlingly hot, it was ice cold. Chloe took a step backward. Her vision was blurring at the sides now, and her face and her chest were getting painfully tight. Her mind was trying to fight off a realization of what had happened, but the realization was coming anyway. She frowned uncomfortably hard and bit her lower lip and ran out of the room. Chloe could barely see now. Her eyes were so wet, she fell to her knees in the kitchen. She curled up in a ball at the base of the kitchen sink and stared at her toes and watched them blur until she could not recognize them. Hot tears burst from her eyes and ran down her cheeks, and then she cried. It burst out of her. Her mouth fell open, her lower lip trembled, and she cried and screamed and cried some more. Isabella woke to the sound of Chloe's crying. Instinctively, she knew what must have happened. So she ran past Mother's room, not daring to look in. She ran to the kitchen. She buried her face in Chloe's lap, and she cried too. They cried until they were exhausted from crying, till the sadness was drowned out by the physical exhaustion of the tears. And when they had no strength left for crying, they sat, panting, sobbing, two silhouettes holding each other on the dark and dirty kitchen floor. There were footsteps on the basement stairs, a single set of hard-soled shoes. They heard the footsteps cross the living room floor and stop at Mother's doorway a moment. Then they heard a man catch his breath. A scratchy voice said softly, "Oh, girls." It was their Uncle James, and Jairod behind him. They ran to James, and they hugged him round the waist. They all cried again. James sat on the floor of the hall outside his sister's bedroom, and he held the girls. Chapter 12. Odd Food. Later that night, James said to the girls, "You two girls need to try to eat something." And he handed them a small brown paper bag. He had a frantic look in his eyes. It was not sadness, but fear and desperation. "I'll be back as soon as I can manage, but I have to go take care of things." And he left the girls. Jairod followed him, carrying Mother's body from the basement apartment. Chloe was grateful that Mother's face was under a sheet. The apartment was empty, cold and silent. The quiet felt heavy, as if the air was somehow thicker. There were no sounds from the shop, no children playing. No Uncle James, no toy maker, no Jairod, no Timony. Not even the sound of Mother sleeping in the other room. The small basement apartment was quieter than the girls had ever heard before. There was not much in the bag, 3 meal bars, and the girls weren't hungry. They felt trapped now, more than they had ever felt before. Without Mother sleeping in the other room, it felt as if it was up now to the girls to look to the future, more than ever before. Before, there had at least been a faint glimmer of hope that Mother would wake up and smile and be better. Now there was no hope.
Now that Mother is gone, who is to look after us?
Bella asked Chloe. She was sitting on the dusty floor, looking at her dirty, too-tight shoes. I'm not sure, said Chloe, knowing that it was they who had taken care of their mother most of Isabella's life.
Why doesn't Uncle James take care of us?
Isabella asked. He tries, but he has work, Chloe said. He works all day, and most of the night. I don't think he'd have time to be here at all. Besides, he has to keep us a secret. If he came here every day, the secret would be discovered. The truth was that Uncle James, being only one man, did not have enough consumption points to legally keep the girls. He will have to keep them hidden, alone in his basement apartment. But the girls knew nothing of this. They discussed their fate most of the evening in worried tones until it was late night. But just as they were thinking of going to bed, so tired that they were close to falling asleep where they sat, they heard a sound. The sound of the trap door, followed by light, and graceful footsteps on the stairs.
Little girls?
Said Timony, calling from the stairs. The girls jumped up and ran and hugged her and were so glad to have a friend. Timony held a very large paper bag in her arms, and she set it on the old bench that served as a table in the center of the apartment.
I've brought you food,
she said in a forced, cheerful tone. She seemed very tired and dirty and sweaty.
I didn't know you could sweat,
Isabella said.
It's not my sweat,
answered Timothy. But the girls didn't quite understand, and they were enthralled with the grocery bag. They ripped into it like you might have unwrapped Christmas presents when you were a small child. The contents were unexpected, though. There were radishes, onions, chewing tobacco, mustard, a brick of blue cheese, sugar cubes, a jar of oregano, and some tape. Timony had never eaten before, or even seen a meal, so she didn't understand anything about it. With each new item, the girls' excitement was replaced with a look of puzzlement as they tried to picture how they could arrange this odd assortment into a meal. Timony could see the expressions on their faces. She sighed and said,
What did I do wrong? Well, none of this is food that...
Bella started to say, but Chloe interrupted. Chloe had noticed that Timony's tutu was filthy and torn, with strange stains and spots, and that the ballerina's hair was disheveled and torn. So Chloe said, Nothing's wrong, this is wonderful. And she tore off a mouthful of bitter blue cheese, trying her best to swallow it without spitting it back up. She shuddered as she swallowed.
I can get more, or something different,
Timony said, but she looked scared when she said it. She looked at the girls imploringly, fearful of what she must do to earn more money.
Maybe we can make you a list,
Bella began to say, but Chloe added, This will last a while, thank you so much. Bella gave Chloe a look that said, Why would you tell her that if she could get more? And Chloe flashed her back a glance that said, Shush, I will tell you later. And so Isabella had dinner of radishes, and Chloe had a dinner of blue cheese and sugar cubes, to make it less bitter. Finally, the three went to sleep. Chloe in her bed, Bella in her hammock, and Timony lying battered on the floor in the corner of their room, like the broken doll that she was.